Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel. If you're new here, make sure to hit subscribe so you never miss the new stories we share. Let's begin. The night I found him, the temperature had dropped to 23 degrees in Millbrook, Tennessee. I wasn't supposed to be at the school that late. Nobody was. But I'd left my daughter's birthday present in my classroom and her party was the next morning. So there I was, walking across the empty parking lot at 11 o'clock, my breath turning to fog under the yellow security lights. That's when I heard it. A sound so faint, so weak, I almost convinced myself it was the wind rattling through the bare oak trees that lined the bus depot. But something in my chest wouldn't let me walk away. Call it instinct, call it fate. I don't know what to call it anymore. I turned toward the row of school buses parked in the shadows at the far end of the lot. The sound came again. A whimper, thin and desperate, like a wounded animal fighting to survive. My name is Eleanor Vance. I was 42 years old that night, a fourth-grade teacher at Millbrook Elementary for 17 years. I thought I understood how the world worked. I thought I knew what cruelty looked like, what love meant, what family was supposed to be. I was wrong about all of it. I approached the buses slowly, my hands trembling from more than the cold. The third bus in the row had its emergency door slightly ajar at the back. I pulled myself up the steps, and the smell hit me first. Dirty diapers, sour formula, desperation. He was bundled in a threadbare blanket tucked beneath the last seat. A baby boy, maybe 6 months old, his lips blue from the cold, his tiny fists clenched against the winter trying to claim him. "Oh my God," I whispered, dropping to my knees. "Oh, sweetheart, oh no, no, no." I scooped him into my arms and he felt so light, too light. His cry was barely a whisper now, like he'd already learned that screaming wouldn't bring anyone to save him. That understanding broke something inside me. I pressed him against my chest, wrapping my coat around both of us, trying to share whatever warmth my body could give. His skin was ice, his breathing was shallow. "You're okay now," I kept saying, though I didn't know if it was true. "I've got you, I've got you." That's when I felt it against my palm, something hard, something metallic hanging from a thin chain around his neck, a ring. I pulled it free from beneath his blanket with shaking fingers. It was a man's wedding band, gold, worn smooth from years of use. I angled it toward the distant security light and my heart stopped. There was an engraving on the inside. 5 words that would unravel everything I thought I knew about my own family, my own history, my own blood. "For David, forgive me. Father." My brother's name was David. My brother who died 30 years ago when he was 19. My brother whose memory my parents refused to speak of, whose photographs had been removed from every wall, whose existence had been erased like a shameful secret. I stared at that ring, and the frozen world around me began to spin. I called 911 from my car, the baby pressed against me, the heater blasting on high. The paramedics arrived in 7 minutes, but those 7 minutes felt like hours. I watched his chest rise and fall, counting each breath like a prayer. "He's hypothermic but stable," the paramedic said, a young woman named Rosa with kind eyes. "You found him just in time, ma'am, another hour out there." She didn't finish the sentence. She didn't need to. The police came next. Officer Marcus Webb, a man I'd taught 20 years ago when he was a gap-toothed kid who couldn't sit still during reading time. Now he stood before me with a notebook, asking questions I couldn't answer. "Did you see anyone leaving the area? Any vehicles?" I shook my head, still clutching the ring in my fist. Baby had no identification, nothing with him. I hesitated. The ring burned against my palm like it was alive. I should have handed it over, I know that now, but something stopped me, something deep and primal and desperate. "Just the blanket," I heard myself say, "nothing else." I lied to the police that night. I lied because I needed answers before anyone else could bury them. The hospital kept the baby for 3 days. They named him Baby John in their system, a placeholder for a child nobody claimed. I visited every day, sitting beside his incubator, watching him grow stronger, watching his skin turn from gray to pink, watching his eyes focus on the world around him. He had David's eyes. I couldn't stop seeing it. The same deep brown, the same curious intensity. My brother David had been the golden child, the one everyone loved. Charming, brilliant, destined for greatness. And then, when I was 12 and he was 19, he vanished. My parents told me he died in a car accident in Memphis, closed casket funeral. No viewing, no body to say goodbye to. "It's better this way," my mother had said, her face like stone. "We need to move forward." I'd spent 30 years believing that lie. Now I sat in a hospital room in Millbrook, staring at a baby wearing my dead brother's wedding ring, and I knew in my bones that David hadn't died in any car accident. I knew that someone had left this child for me to find. And I knew that the betrayal I was about to uncover went deeper than I could imagine. On the 4th day, I went to visit my mother. She lived alone in the same house in Chattanooga where I'd grown up, a white colonial with black shutters and a wraparound porch that had always felt more like a prison than a home. My father had died 3 years earlier, taking whatever secrets he carried to his grave. My mother was 74 now, frail but sharp-eyed. She opened the door and studied my face. "Alina, this is unexpected. We need to talk," I said. "About David." Her expression flickered, just for a moment, then the mask returned. "Your brother is dead," she said. "There's nothing to discuss." I held up the ring. My mother's face went white, not pale, white like all the blood had drained from her body in a single heartbeat. "Where did you get that?" Her voice was barely a whisper. "Someone left a baby on a school bus 3 nights ago," I said, pushing past her into the house. "A baby wearing David's wedding ring around his neck. A ring that says forgive me on the inside." She stood frozen in the doorway, her hand gripping the frame like it was the only thing keeping her upright. "I want the truth, Mother. I want to know what really happened to my brother." The silence stretched between us, thick and suffocating. The grandfather clock in the hallway ticked like a countdown to something terrible. Finally, she closed the door. "Sit down," she said. "This will take a while." What she told me over the next hour destroyed every memory I had of my childhood. David hadn't died in a car accident. He'd fallen in love with a woman named Sarah Mitchell, the daughter of our family's housekeeper, a black woman. In 1993, in our corner of Tennessee, that was enough to tear a family apart. "Your father gave him an ultimatum," my mother said, her voice hollow. "End the relationship or lose everything, his inheritance, his family, his name." "David chose Sarah," I said, already knowing the answer. "He chose love." My mother's lip curled slightly, even now, even after all these years. "He walked out that door and never came back. Your father staged the accident to explain his absence, forged death certificates, paid off the right people. In those days, if you had enough money, you could make anyone disappear." I felt sick. "And you just went along with it? You let me believe my brother was dead?" "You were 12, she said. "You wouldn't have understood." "I understand now." I stood up, my legs unsteady. "I understand that my parents erased their own son because he loved someone they disapproved of." My mother looked away. "It was a different time." "Don't," I said. "Don't you dare hide behind that excuse. Where is he? Where is David now?" Her silence told me everything. "You don't know," I realized. "You cut him out so completely, you never even bothered to find out if he was alive or dead." I left that house without looking back. The next 3 weeks became an obsession. I hired a private investigator named Marcus Cole out of Nashville, a former FBI agent with a reputation for finding people who didn't want to be found. "David Vance," he said during our first meeting. "Born 1974, declared dead 1993. Let me see what I can dig up." While Marcus worked, I kept visiting baby John at the hospital. The state had placed him in temporary foster care with a family in Knoxville, but I applied for emergency custody. I didn't fully understand why at first. Maybe it was guilt. Maybe it was that desperate need to protect something my family had tried to destroy. Maybe I just needed to believe that love could still win. Marcus called me on a Tuesday evening, his voice tight with urgency. "I found him," he said. "David Vance, he's alive, living in Pine Ridge, Alabama, about 4 hours south of you. But Alina, there's something you need to know before you go." I gripped the phone. "Tell me." "He's dying, stage 4 pancreatic cancer. Doctors gave him 3 months, maybe less. He's been trying to find you. He hired someone 6 months ago, but your mother's people intercepted the investigator, paid him off." My mother, still protecting her precious secrets even now. "There's more," Marcus continued. "David has a son, 28 years old, named Thomas. Sarah died in childbirth and David raised him alone, but Thomas has struggled, drug problems, in and out of jail, lost custody of his own child 18 months ago. The baby, Thomas's son, my brother's grandson. The ring," I whispered. "David gave it to Thomas, and Thomas left the baby where you'd find him. He's been watching you, Alina, following your routine. He knew about your late nights at the school. He couldn't care for that child anymore, and he wanted him to have family." I drove to Pine Ridge the next morning. David's house was small, a modest ranch-style home at the end of a dirt road. The paint was peeling and the yard was overgrown, but there were flower boxes in the windows, still tended, still alive. I sat in my car for 20 minutes, unable to move. The brother I'd mourned for 30 years was on the other side of that door. The brother my parents had stolen from me. Finally, I walked up the path and knocked. The man who answered was a shadow of the brother I remembered. Gaunt, pale, his brown eyes sunken but still burning with that familiar intelligence. He looked at me and his face crumpled. "Ellie," he breathed. "You came, you actually came." I fell into his arms and 30 years of grief poured out of me. We sat on his back porch as the sun set over the Alabama hills. He told me everything. The years of struggle after leaving, working 3 jobs while Sarah was pregnant, her death, the crushing loneliness of raising Thomas alone, the constant fear that our father's money and influence would find him, would take his son away. "I wanted to contact you so many times," David said, his voice breaking. "I couldn't risk it if they knew where I was." "I would have come," I said. "I would have chosen you." He squeezed my hand. "I know that now. I should have known it then." We talked until the stars came out. He showed me photographs of Sarah, of Thomas as a baby, of a life lived in exile but lived with love. Thomas tried, David said softly. He really tried, but the drugs, the anger, losing his boy, it broke him. He couldn't watch his son go into the foster system. So he found you. I brought David home to Tennessee 2 weeks later. He wanted to die where he was born, close to the land that held his earliest memories, even if that land had once rejected him. I set him up in my guest room, hired a hospice nurse, and spent every possible moment by his side. Thomas came to see his father 3 days before the end. He stood in the doorway of the guest room, thin and trembling, the shame radiating off him like heat. "I'm sorry," he kept saying. "I'm so sorry." David reached out his hand. "Come here, son." I watched them embrace, watched Thomas weep against his father's chest, watched David stroke his hair like he was still a little boy. "You did the right thing," David whispered. "You gave him to family. That took courage." Thomas looked at me then, his eyes red and desperate. I didn't know what else to do. I couldn't keep him safe anymore. I couldn't be what he needed. "I know," I said, "and I forgive you. The baby's name is Samuel now. Samuel David Vance." The courts granted me permanent custody 6 weeks after David passed. Thomas is in a rehabilitation program in Atlanta, working toward rebuilding his life. We talk on the phone every Sunday night. My mother never apologized. I didn't expect her to. But when she died 8 months after David, I found letters in her closet. Hundreds of them addressed to my brother, never sent. In her own broken way, she had mourned him too. I burned those letters in the backyard, one by one, and watched the ashes drift up toward the sky. Samuel is 2 years old now. He has David's eyes and Sarah's smile. He runs through my house with boundless energy, and the walls that once felt so empty now overflow with laughter and life and love. Sometimes, late at night, I sit on the porch and look up at the stars. I think about David, about all the years we lost, about the parents who chose pride over love and paid the ultimate price. I think about that cold December night when I found a baby on a school bus, wearing a ring around his neck, with a message that would change everything. And I realized that in the end, love found its way back, through all the betrayal, through all the pain, through all the decades of silence. Love found its way home. Thanks for watching. Subscribe and visit the channel for more real-life stories.